Hey folks, Rob Franick here, Editor-in-Chief here at the Princeton Review, and today we are sharing the top 7 concepts and strategies that you need to master and of course perform well on the AP English Literature and Composition exam. Now, the AP Literature exam sometimes gets confused with the AP Language and Composition exam. Now, while there are similarities, let's address right here and right now the key difference. The AP English Language exam tests students on their ability to deconstruct arguments as well as rhetorical strategies in works of nonfiction such as journals and news articles and memoirs and speeches. Whereas the AP English Literature exam, that's the one that we're covering today, focuses on the ability, your ability to critically analyze fiction and drama and poetry and use literary devices. That said, my friends, let's jump right into the key concepts and strategies that you need to conquer the AP English Literature exam. Concept number 1 is the big 6 ideas. Now, folks, there are 6 big ideas that serve as the foundation for the AP English Literature and Composition exam. Now, the College Board, the creators of all things AP, calls them the 6 big ideas, and they are character, setting, structure, narration, figurative language, and of course, literary argumentation. Now, these are conceptual themes that will be tested throughout the exam. The first 5 are elements of literature. The 6th, literary argumentation, is the method by which you take the 5 elements to analyze literature. Now, the multiple choice section of the exam will test your knowledge of those big 6 as you will be evaluated on the skills categories that map very closely to these ideas. So be sure to understand these foundational concepts well before exam day. That leads me to concept number 2, which is basic parts of speech and literary terms. Now, by the time exam day rolls around, you should be fluent in your understanding of the basic parts of speech, including nouns and verbs and prepositions and so on. That said, you should also become a confirmed master of literary terms. As such, you will absolutely need to know terms like allusion, conceit, dramatic irony, metaphor, stanza, and personal favorite, hyperbole. And folks, that is just to name a handful. Make a point to review the glossary in your prep book to master these terms. They will, without question, be essential on test date. Point number 3, consistency of answers. Friends, this is a strategy that will, without question again, come in handy on the multiple choice section of the exam. If you find yourself struggling to identify the correct answer of a multiple choice question, then choose an answer that agrees with the main idea of the passage. The main idea should be your guiding light for most of the questions in any passage. Our team at the Princeton Review calls this principle consistency of answers. As you work on a passage, you will find that the best answer on several of the questions has to do with the main idea, even if the question itself is focused on specific details of the passage. You will also find that correct answers tend to be consistent with other correct answers. So, when in doubt, pick answers that agree with each other. For example, if you are sure that the correct answer to question 9 is B, and it says that Mr. Buffalo is extremely whimsical, then the answer to the corresponding questions shouldn't contradict the answer. In other words, correct answers wouldn't contend that Mr. Buffalo is a serious bloke. Folks, correct answers will be consistent with the main idea and consistent with other correct answers throughout the section. That leads me to concept number 4, which is literary movements. Now, a literary movement is a grouping of writers who share similar aims, similar years of publication, or similar base of operations. Now, examples of literary movement include metaphysical poetry and romanticism and modernism and the Harlem Renaissance. Folks, understanding literary movements can be useful, of course, on exam day. And I'll give you an example of how. If you recognize that a poem is from the Romantic tradition, you will have some immediate ideas about form and structure and content and figurative language and overall meaning, you will also readily think of phrases like sublime transcendence, redemptive nature, imaginative power, and you will be able to use them in your analysis on the free response section. Folks, understanding literary movements will also help you organize your reading list. Now, while there is no recommended or required reading list for the AP English Literature and Composition exam, the College Board, again, creators of all things AP, does offer a representative author list. You'll see authors and poets like Emily Dickinson and Langston Hughes and Herman Melville and James Baldwin on that list. At first glance, that list may seem daunting, and by itself it's really not that helpful, again, at first glance. But when the list is reformatted to group writers by literary movement, you will find it to be much more understandable and incredibly helpful on the exam. Now, concept number 5. It is the art of the 7-minute passage. Friends, having a strategy to deal with the time pressure on the AP English Literature exam will be key to your bona fide success. When you hit the last passage on the multiple choice portion of the test, check your time. If you have 7 minutes or fewer left, you will need a backup strategy to manage your limited time. We call this strategy the art of the 7-minute passage. Here's what you need to do. First, you don't read the passage. Folks, I'm going to say it again. Do not read the passage. It might feel like heresy, my friends. We know it, but do not read that passage. Given your limited time, go straight to the questions and answer them in the following order. Number 1, answer any literary term or grammar questions. Folks, you barely need the passage for these questions. Number 2, go to the questions that ask for the meaning of a single word or phrase. These questions will always include a line reference. Read the sentence before and after the reference and then answer the question. Number 3, go to the questions that give you a line reference in the question itself. Read the reference and then answer the question. Number 4, answer questions on tone and attitude. Remember that by this time you have already read quite a bit of the passage itself by answering the previous questions, so you should be able to make a good guess. Leads me to number 5, answer questions that have line references in the answer choices. Number 6, do whatever is left. Those are character questions or primary purpose questions or straight up weird questions, and so on and so on. Again, we only encourage this strategy if you are pressed for time and it works with 7 minutes or 6 or 5 or 4 or 3 or 2 or 1. But the amount of time that you will have to determine how far you get down that list will be how much time you have left on the exam. Now, concept number 6. It's called the idea machine. I think you're going to love this one. Now, of course, on the free response part of the exam, it is also timed, and the most stressful part of writing essays in any time constraint is to quickly come up with something to say. You don't have time to write out a full outline during the exam. So we've developed at the Princeton Review a method that we call, for all AP essays, that we call the idea machine. Now, the idea machine is a series of questions that direct your reading to the material needed to generate an essay idea, plan out your first paragraph, and then ultimately write your essay. Now, let's review the questions that you need to ask. The first question that you always should be asking first is, what is the meaning of the work? Now, this asks for both the literal, the actual face value meaning of the work, as well as the feeling or feelings that the work evokes. The second question, how does the author get that meaning across? Now, to answer that, ask yourself the following questions. What are the important images of that work, and what do those images suggest? What specific words or short phrases produce the strongest feelings, and what do the characters, the setting, the structure, or narrators tell you about the passage? Folks, when you apply the answers from those questions to the essay, you will have what you need to write the kind of essay that scorers want to see. Give it a try on your next practice test, and we promise you that this process will not fail you. Leads me to concept number 7, which is preparing your primary and your secondary works. Now, to prepare for your literary argument, you'll need to be strategic about which works you select. You should know at least 3 works very well. 2 should be longer primary works that you've studied extensively in class, and the 3rd is your secondary work, which will serve as a safeguard in the event that you can't apply your knowledge of the primary works into the question. So, for your primary works, choose options that you love and know well. You should also choose works that are fairly hefty. Consider full works from authors like Charles Dickens or Nathaniel Hawthorne or William Shakespeare or Toni Morrison. The goal is to select 2 primary works that are so rich in incident and form that no matter what the literary argument question asks, you will have something to say. And that said, do not pick a short story or a work of nonfiction or a poem. But again, your secondary work, and this is your just-in-case work, should be as different as possible from your primary work. So for example, if your primary works are Shakespearean tragedy, then pick a modern comic novella as your secondary work, like Catch-22 by Joseph Heller. Now, folks, we strongly recommend selecting a novella or a play, no doubt, but that said, no matter which 3 works you pick, be sure to reread and study each work as thoroughly as you can. We also recommend writing the first paragraph of a literary argument a couple of nights before the test using the sample prompts from your practice test. Doing so will save you so much time on exam day. Folks, as always, we hope that you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please do give it a thumbs up and please do share your thoughts in the comment section below. Also, check out our awesome AP prep books at the Princeton Review, and as always, please do subscribe to our channel if you haven't already for the latest updates on standardized exams, college admission study tips, and much, much more. Rob Franek, Editor-in-Chief, signing off for today. Be well, take care.